Hi, welcome to my channel. Today I wanted to share our story about having our son diagnosed with autism and just kind of our journey of getting there. And I kind of wanted this to hopefully become a series on my channel, just sharing a few things about autism, some things that I find helpful, some resources I find helpful, so we can create this community and realize we're not alone and that we're doing a good job. So if you're new to my channel, I created this channel as a homeschooling resource to give you some feedback, I guess, is what we're doing today, give you some personal stories that might help you and will help me in return as well, but also to give you curriculum ideas, and we do some unboxings here and just ways to invite Christ into your homeschool space. So if you're interested in those things, please hit that subscribe button. So I'm gonna tell the story. Hopefully it's not super long, but I just felt like I wanted to share and just so other people could have hopefully a relatable experience and know that they're not alone, that there's other people going through difficult things, and then there's people going through more difficult things than we even experience on a day-to-day basis. So my oldest was recently diagnosed with autism. He's 8 years old, he's 8.5. And so I just kind of wanted to go through what has happened over the years that's led to that diagnosis. So we moved to Connecticut when he was about 8 years old, and we lived there for 5 years because my husband was doing PhD at Yale University in New Haven. And so we moved there, and he was a normal baby. You know, he got teeth like all the other babies, and you know, he talked and everything, and he seemed just like a normal little baby. And when he was about 17 months old, I had another child. I had a girl. And at this point, he loved to stack things. He'd go and stack cans, he'd stack books, and he wouldn't just stack books, he'd like layer them in certain ways and wanted this book on the bottom and this book on the top. If I can find photos, I'll insert them because I know I have some somewhere. And then, you know, he'd stack paper towels and things. And I honestly didn't think too much of it because I've mentioned before, I kind of struggle with OCD, not like clinically diagnosed anything, but I'm a little crazy, kind of monkish, I guess you could say. Great series. If you need something to watch right now, you should watch Monk. And the first 3 seasons aren't my favorite, but the rest of it is amazing, and I just love it, and I relate to him. I'm not that crazy, but I do understand where he's coming from. And so I'd see these types of behaviors in him, and I'm like, oh, I also struggle with that. So he's probably just getting it from me, that poor child. Like, I felt kind of bad for him because, as Monk says, it's a gift and a curse, and that's how I feel most of the time. I'm like, ugh. Everyone, it's like, oh, you're so clean and meticulous. I'm like, yeah, but it's not always great having to have stuff just this certain way. Sometimes it's a little bit rough. So we saw those types of behaviors, but nothing crazy. And he started to talk. My daughter that's 17 months younger than him, before she was even 2, was talking extremely well. And she was potty trained and everything. And he wasn't potty trained yet. He was almost 4 before he was potty trained. You know, and so there was just all these things, but nothing out of the ordinary, you know, and he's a boy and she's a girl. So it's like, you can't directly compare them either. And he did speak. It wasn't that he didn't speak, he just didn't speak a lot. And when he spoke, it was clear, unlike my 3rd and 4th child, who both one of them's already gone to speech therapy, the other one probably will have to. And so he spoke very clearly and everything. There just weren't any issues. So then he started preschool. And in New Haven, you could do it through the public school system, and it was just at the elementary school. And so he went to preschool, and he had a really great teacher. She was just out of school herself. She loved the kid. She helped us potty train him. She was willing to let him come to school not potty trained, and then she was willing to help us potty train him and everything. And so that was a little bit of a chore, but we made it through. And so before I forget, if you guys have questions or things you'd like me to specifically address about autism, please leave them below, because maybe just talking about potty training made me think about that. Maybe you want to know what we did. It wasn't, I don't know. I don't think it's anything profound, but if you have questions, I would love to hear, and it would help me know what you guys would like to hear from me and what advice I might be able to help you with. So just leave those comments below. So anyways, his first year of preschool went really well, and you know, he had a few issues, but nothing big. All kids have some issue that comes up. And then he started going into his 2nd year of preschool, and his sister started at the same time as him going into his 2nd year of preschool. And they had 2 classes that were offered at the same time. So I put them in different classes so they could have their own like individual experience. And this was also our last year of graduate school. I was pregnant with our fourth child. And so there was a lot of stresses going on this last year with my husband going on the job market. And he was traveling a lot, and it was harder than we thought it was gonna be. There was some extended family issues and nothing crazy, but it was still all these little stresses everywhere. It was a very, very difficult year. And so he starts preschool, going into this last year of us being in graduate school. And the week before, they switched teachers, moved his old teacher to a different school. And the new one, she was a little bit older, nothing against older teachers, but she just had these very specific views of how he should be acting. And it was just very difficult. They just did not work well together. He got in trouble a lot. He was acting out a lot more. And, again, it was like, what's the cause of this? Is it because of everything going on at home? The fact I'm having another baby, we're gonna be moving, like dad's gone a lot, just all these different issues that were so stressful. And so it was hard to pinpoint what exactly was going on. So we did get a job. We moved to California from Connecticut, and we lived there for about a year. So when we first got there, he's going into kindergarten, and so he starts kindergarten. We're very upfront with his teachers, with his principal. My husband met with them a couple times in the first month to talk to them about things. He's a lot more diplomatic, and I'm very straightforward and blunt, which is good in some cases, but not always good because I'm not always the nicest, and I don't mean to not be. I don't know if that makes sense, but it just comes out, and it usually doesn't sound good and gets people upset at me. So if we need it to be like diplomatic, he gets to go, not me. And so he went and, talked with them. They had some different meetings right towards the beginning of this month. School only lasted a month for us there. So at the beginning of this month, he went and he talked to them. They went through everything. They set up some plans, and then things didn't go so well. And so he met with them again, and they made like an outline kind of, and we're like, okay, well, here's the things we want him to work on. I think maybe like sitting in his chair, and I don't even remember what the other ones were, but he was also struggling with transitions, like going out to play at recess and coming back in. He'd just run around and run away from everybody because it was time to play, right? Not time to come back inside. And so just all those types of things. He had a really hard time with transitioning. And so they set up this plan, and every day at the end of school, they would give me this thing that had all these smiley faces or frowny faces, and then they'd color in where he was and tell me. And so after these few weeks into school, he's telling me, oh, I had a bad day because there's a lot of frowny faces on there. And I just felt horrible that, his school experience was now tied to if he had all these frowny faces on this paper, and it just was breaking my heart. And I felt so bad for him because he's like, I thought it was a good day, but then I saw the paper, and he felt like he was doing a good job, but then his teachers didn't see that, and it was just a struggle. And the principal and the teachers told us we needed to have better discipline at home. That was the problem, and that we needed to make him scared to come home. And obviously we did not agree with that, and we didn't think it was okay for him to be terrified to come home and to have, we thought we had a good discipline system, and he wasn't the greatest at home either, but he knew us, and we had rules, we had boundaries. He knew we were in charge, and so it was a lot easier. And in preschool and in kindergarten, he was more of a struggle at school than he was at home, even though we could still see the struggles, but it wasn't anything huge or major. And he'd occasionally have tantrums and stuff, but again, nothing so big at home. But at school, it was a bigger struggle for sure. And so we're going through all this school, and we're about 3 weeks in. All this has already happened. The first 3 weeks of kindergarten have already been this stressful. And I start thinking about homeschooling him. And I've mentioned this in one of my other videos. I can't even remember which one, but if I think about it, I'll link it up above or down below. And so if we go back to when I was in college, my bachelor's degree is in human development. And so in one of my classes, we had to write a paper that was for or against something. And it didn't really matter what it was for or against as long as we argued one side or the other. And so obviously it was something revolving around education or children or something. We just had to take a side on it. So I decided to be against homeschooling. That was what I was going to write my paper on. And this was about 9 years ago. There wasn't a ton of research on homeschooling. Honestly, I don't know the type of research available now. I feel like there's a lot more, but at the time it was hard to find any papers. But every paper that I did find was positive. Almost everything they said about homeschool was positive. And so as I went through this paper, I realized I couldn't argue negative. I didn't have any evidence besides having a poor family experience. That's where my evidence was from and why I chose the topic in the first place. And so I ended up being for homeschooling and thought it was a good thing. But then fast forward as I'm having kids and stuff, I'm like, I don't want to homeschool. I'm happy when my kids go away and they leave me alone and they go to school, which I know that's not the case with every mom. I know we're all different, but it was just kind of this much needed break for me. And I'm like, I'm not patient enough to homeschool. I can't do it. There is no way. And so I pushed it out of my mind. Nope, we're just going to send them to public school and everything will be fine. So then we come to this point in California, 3 weeks into kindergarten, and I am stressed out. My son is stressed out. He doesn't feel like he's doing well in school at all. And so I decided that we should homeschool him, and I brought it up to my husband, and he was blown away because he didn't think I would ever say that that's what I wanted to do. And so I was like, okay, we'll just let him finish this week and then we'll take him out of school. They were making ice cream at the end of the week and he was really, really excited to make ice cream. And so on Thursday, I get a call from my husband because I just stopped answering my phone when the school called. They called so much, it was ridiculous. And so they always called him. He's the nicer one, remember? So they call him. And so I have to go pick him up because my husband has classes to teach and he can't do it. And so I go to the school and they're like, oh, if you don't pick him up before 10 a.m. this morning, we're gonna suspend him for Friday as well. So that's why we had to pick him. He had pushed a kid on the playground, probably nothing super crazy. That's just, kids push other kids. But it was enough that they were like, oh, we're just gonna kick him out of school. So they were like, oh, he's gonna be suspended for this day. And if you're not here by 10 o'clock this morning, we'll suspend him for the next day. And so I go in and he's in the principal's office, and I have a couple other kids at least. I had a daughter in preschool, but I don't think she was at preschool yet, or if we were on the way to take her. And so we get there and obviously I am mad and frustrated with them. And they don't want to hear my side of the story or anything. And so I give him a piece of my mind and tell him he's not coming back. And so we left and I took him out of school and we went and bought an ice cream maker because we didn't have one, and some stuff to make ice cream, and he loved it. It was like he was so disappointed that he wouldn't get to make ice cream. So I was like, okay, we can go get this stuff and make ice cream because this isn't your fault. You're trying so hard to be good, and you just can't do it. And so much research that I've read and studied, it's like kids want to be good and they will be good if they have the tools to be good. And so kids don't act out just to spite you. They just don't have the tools yet. So we have to provide them with those things and recognize that they need tools to be able to function. So I wasn't ready to homeschool. We did the best we could. Again, it was kindergarten. I wasn't too concerned about it. So we went a month without much. And then we did a little bit of math and a little bit of science experiments and stuff and just had fun. And then we moved again. So we weren't expecting that, but we did. We moved again after a year of being there and came to Utah. And so then once we got here, we went in. So in California, I had talked to his pediatrician. Even though we were only there for a year, I'd mentioned these anxiety issues and if we need to have him tested, because at the school, I forgot to mention, they said if we had him tested, for any sort of behavioral issues or anything, they wouldn't do anything different. They told us that. They're like, no, if he tests, if he had tested for autism or something else, they wouldn't change how they were going about things, which doesn't even make sense at all. But that's what they had told us. So the doctor told us that if we wanted to have him tested or anxiety type stuff dealt with, we need to do it through the school district, and it would take a long time. And since we were moving, we didn't worry about it, because I was like, we're moving in a few months, and I'm not gonna try to start this process. And I had a few friends from church there that also had kids that had autism, and they said, yes, it is this really lengthy process you have to go through with the school district. So we move here and we see the pediatrician, and I was like, oh, can we get him into some behavioral therapists or something? And we live in an area where there's not as much mental health care, not many people, to do it. And so you're on a wait list for a long time. So we were on a wait list for about 7 months. They said 6 months, and it ended up being 7. So my husband took him in, because I'm already kind of anxious, so it just stresses me out sometimes to have to go in and listen to all these things. I take the kids to all their normal doctor's appointments, and he does the hard stuff. Here, you can take him. And so he took him into these appointments with this behavioral therapist, and the therapist is like, oh, I think we should have him tested for autism, just to rule that out. Because then if these behavioral issues are just things I need to work with him on, then I need to know that it's not autism. And he just said, we were wondering where, because I was like, oh, do we have to do it through the school district? He's like, no, you just come here. It was $200 at the Intermountain Clinic, and they just took him there and they tested him. And so it took about a week, I guess, to get the results back. And then my husband just went in and met with the doctor. And so I was with all my kids. I had taken this son that has autism 2 piano lessons that day. So my husband called me, and he's like, well, the good news is, honestly, we were kind of hoping that it would be autism, because then it would explain what was going on, at least to an extent, and make us feel a little bit better. I feel like this whole time it's like, oh, am I just being a horrible parent? Did I do something wrong? What do people think when they look at us during this whole experience and stuff? And so he's like, the good news is he has autism, which I know sounds horrible, but it was like a relief. It was a relief to know that that's what it was. And it was, we suspected that's what it was. It kind of floated around for a few years, but we had been moving so much and doing so many things, it was just hard to deal with it. And it wasn't a huge problem, right? He can speak, he can function for the most part. It was just some of his tantrums and fits and anxieties that he deals with. That was the struggle. And so I was just happy to know, so that we could have some sort of direction to go in from there and have something to tell our families, because there were times where it was like, oh, do you think I'm just being a horrible parent because this kid is throwing this tantrum and he's going a little crazy and we're not, quite sure what to do. And so that was kind of the experience. And again, it was nice to know what was going on. And it was just this relief on, like, just relief. That's what I felt like when we got the answer back, is just to know what was going on. That's always nice to, even if you don't like the answer, it's always nice to know, instead of living in this unknown sphere, because that's scary. So we adjust day by day. We struggle through it, and we keep on going. He is high functioning autistic. There's the terminology for autism is a little bit of a struggle, because I feel like all children that have autism are high functioning, not just the verbal ones and the ones that don't need as much help. And so there are some different languages people use. I'm not completely familiar with all of them, but some, like, I have some friends that have a severely autistic child, he needs more help, he's nonverbal. So there's different ways to describe him, whereas high functioning it seems unfair, because I feel like all of them they're all high functioning. They all are extremely smart and brilliant, have great potential, but they just have some struggles, and we have to work with them on that. And so he probably, Asperger's would have been the diagnosis, if they still use that term. Now everything's just on the autism spectrum. And so he's on the spectrum, and again, I'm just relieved to know, so that we can know how to help him and try to move forward. So that's kind of our story. I know it was kind of long, and I hope it was sort of informative, but I'd love to share other things. I have a few plans to share a few other things, and things that how we work through day to day, especially with homeschooling and stuff. And therapy wise, if we do anything. So if you have other questions you would like me to address, or just stories to share about your experience with autism, I'd love for you to put them down below in the comments, and we will see you next time.